right, welcome back to the Gentleman Badass podcast. My name is Josh. We got Mick with us as usual.
Hello.
Today we've got an extra special guest. We have got Houston Alexander. So
I don't know how extra special.
You may not know this, but back in the day when before I ever got into any of this stuff, I was kind of following the UFC. I knew there was a UFC fighter out of Omaha, Houston Alexander. Okay, I look him up. Where does he train? He trains at Mick Doyle's gym. So that's actually how I first heard of Mick Doyle's gym. Is one of the reasons that I chose to come here. Then I met the trainer.
Now, I thought you was talking about the other guy with the horn.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I thought you were talking about. So you didn't know about.
I know the name.
Horn was one of the first guys, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't
before
actually,
him, it was Steve.
Jenham?
Steve Jenham.
Right.
Yeah. So Steve and then Jeremy,
Horn,
right?
Yeah, and then Horn would be and then probably Ellenberger after that. Because were you in before Ellenberger?
I was out before all those guys, and now. I probably was before all those guys.
Yeah,
I'm old. So
I watched you fight, and then that's when I kind of started learning about Jake Ellenberger. And there was another UFC fighter. He fought one of the Nogueira brothers from Omaha.
It was Brillsy.
Oh, yeah, Jason
Brills. But we had a lot of people come out of this area.
Yeah.
So but see, this is what I want to talk to Mick about.
Yeah.
In the beginning of all this. When we all started fighting an amateur at a place called Club Amnesia.
Bourbon Street
it was called Bourbon Street. Then it turned to Amnesia, and then now it's a local bar right now. But see, I used to see Mick all the time sitting back just watching. He would fold his arms and he would just be watching people in that fighter stance always all the time in the club watching all these people fight. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you. What was your thought process when you saw at Bourbon Street when they first started in Omaha with MMA?
So
supposedly MMA went in.
Yeah. So the reason I ended up over there is the guy that was promoting those. I think they were calling it No Holds Barred at the time. But
was it Chad?
Yeah,
Chad Mason.
He needed a ring. Well, so he contacted us. So my partner Kevin Newman would take the ring down every Tuesday morning, cart it over to Bourbon Street, set it up, and then he'd charge a rental fee for the ring, and then all you guys used to fight in the ring. So I was going over there, and I was like, man, don't put my logo, don't put anything to do with the gym on this fucking human cockfighting that's going on over at Bourbon Street, because it was wild, because there was no weight divisions. You could sign up right then and there. I mean, guys like you would show up and not even know if you had a fight, but you'd be ready in case somebody goes, who, him? Yeah, he looks about my size. Yeah, I'll do that. But I wanted nothing to do with it. I was just there to kind of watch.
Okay, because you were just watching.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was your ring. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was your...
by the door in case an ambulance showed up.
I didn't know it was your ring
that was our ring.
In the
bar.
They
were using. So I wasn't involved. That was more Kevin. And I was like, man, this is your gig. Like, you go ahead. You can rent the ring. But... I want nothing to do with it.
So Newman did some type of construction, right? He would go to parking lots and he would do the parking lots, right?
Striping parking lots. But he was also a full-bird colonel in the Army.
Yeah.
So that was just a nighttime.
I saw Newman before I even got to the fight. I did asphalt.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I saw Newman I saw Newman at one of the job sites. And I didn't know that he was doing the fights at Bourbon Street at the time.
Those things were wild.
So that's crazy. And the reason why we could talk about this thing, because we end up doing the UFC thing, is because of Bourbon Street. And I got to Bourbon Street on a dare from a friend of mine, Anne Frank, who was one of the persons that was breakdancing with me in our crew. And she came out to one of the fights, and she dared me to come out and sign up and fight one of the fighters there. So obviously on the dare, after working 12 hours of asphalt, I came over to that place and I signed up, and that's when they put me up against the big wrestler guy.
Yeah. And that guy was like he was
huge.
D1.
He was huge. And I remember the bar being smoky because you could smoke at the time. You could smoke at the time, and I just remember hitting that guy, signing up, hitting that guy in his nose, and I remember seeing so much blood. There was so much blood from this guy's nose. But this guy was huge. But yeah, that's when the MMA career started.
So had you been training MMA at all? Or you just
I wrestled a little bit, but I boxed.
Okay.
I did box at CW for about 4 or 5 years, and that was when I was younger. But I wasn't too bad of a boxer, and I thought I was a tough guy. So obviously there you go. Plus I needed the money. I had to pay the rent. Okay. So that's how.
But didn't you fight like a couple of times in one night back then too?
No. I think a couple of times. There would be a couple of times I had fought at the place, and then I think Chad noticed, and then he started taking interest. And so that's when we started doing other places.
He hooked you up at Monty Cox.
Mm-hmm. But so I don't think Monty was interested. I think he hooked me up with the shows that Monty were doing.
Oh, okay.
So Chad kind of played the manager guy.
Gotcha.
So, but Monty wasn't. He just added me to one of his shows, and I just all the shows that he was doing, I would go do some of the shows.
Okay. But when because I talked to him a couple of times because we weren't training together and like that.
Yeah.
But I did say to him, I was like, man, have you ever trained? Like, you could be good. And he's like, I just do this for fun. I sling asphalt all day. I'm doing my breakdancing. I was like, that's too bad. Like, if you ever trained, and then you...
Chad brought me over here. Yeah. I remember Chad brought me over here, and I just remember wanting
to getting your legs kicked off.
Yeah. No, that was before the UFC thing.
That's right.
When Corley was here, and but before that, Chad brought me here, and I think I came a couple of times, and then he had me go someplace else because remember he was being the manager guy, so we can get into all that, but he was being the manager guy, but and he would have me go out to Iowa, where he was staying at the time, and I would train out there. So I went from training here for a little while, and then I went out to Iowa and trained out there with him.
With Pat Militech and those guys?
I don't think it was Pat. See, again, Chad had me at some rinky-dink places that I was training at. So, then because that's where he was located, and he started doing the fights out there in Des Moines. So every week I would go and fight out in Des Moines.
Okay. So then how did UFC? Well, I guess how many fights did you have before, and then how did UFC come about?
I think the tournament was the day we had the tournament at the casino.
Yeah, that was up in Sloan, wasn't it?
Sloan, yeah, that was. I believe it was in Sloan.
Yeah,
and again, I was there by myself, and who sent me out there? Monty asked me because I've done a couple of shows before that. Is if I wanted to be in the tournament, and I guess it was some heavyweight tournament with all these guys, all these tough guys, and I said, yeah, sure. And I just remember being asked by Monty Cox to do this tournament, and I guess the prize was to go out to Hawaii. If we won this tournament, whoever won the tournament, they would send you out to Hawaii. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I go out there and win this tournament. I go to Hawaii, and I end up the guy. I end up being in the final round because I end up beating everybody else. And by Monty's surprise, and the guy I fought in the last fight ended up tapping out. Not he didn't tap out, but he bitched up because he claims I need him in his face, which was a whole bunch of BS. But end up winning the tournament or tying with this guy, and I was waiting for Monty to call me back about the thing going to Hawaii. So I get a call from him. He asks me, hey. There's been a change in plans. What's the change in plans? What Hawaii is not happening? He said no. They're needing an alternate for a fight in the UFC. And at this time, I wasn't even watching the UFC. I didn't even care.
I have a funny story about this.
Because I wasn't even watching it because I was too busy fighting every week. And I wasn't even watching it, but it was just funny. I was like, well, I don't care. I can do that. And he said, well, is against what was his name again?
Keith Jardine.
It was against Keith Jardine. I was like, oh, okay, who is he?
Yeah.
and some guy, blah blah blah.
But didn't Monty say you need a trainer?
Yeah,
He said you actually need a coach for this.
But hold up. And this is how this ended up. I was concerned about how much he weighed because for the past several years, I've been fighting people twice my size, 240, 250, and so I was just worried about, instead of worried about where this guy was ranked, I was worried about how much this guy weighed. They said, "Well, what's the weight?" He said 205. I said, "Sign me up." And so it was just on a humbug that I guess Keith's opponent ended up getting hurt, and they wanted us to come in.
Okay.
And so he said, "Well, you might want to get you a coaching staff together." I'm like, "Really?" And so from that day forward, I started getting my coaching staff together. Okay. And the first person I thought about was you, but we ended up going down. Because I went and talked to Curly Alexander, who was a wrestling coach, who I knew could train me to get in shape. But there was remember Anderson and those guys. Mm-hmm. They had a place down on North 30th Street. Because I think that's where they all started off. Anderson, Horn, all those guys were down at this place down there, and that's the first place where I went to go find a place that had a gym because I didn't know. And then when we couldn't find them, I told Curly at the time, I said, let's go up to Mix. And we came up to, I think the day we walked in, and I told you, hey, we got this thing going. This is about to go up, and this is about to go up. And the first thing Mick tells me to do is what? Well, the day I came in and asked you to be if you could train me for this fight.
But what I do remember,
I remember.
All right, go on, tell me.
I remember.
What did I say?
First thing he says was, "Get in the ring." I was like, "What?"
Oh yeah.
He said, "Get in the ring." He calls Brian Corley, who I'm still mad at. Yeah. So I'm still mad at Brian. I already told him a couple of times, but I'm in jeans and a shirt, and you told me to get in the ring. You said if I wanted to train enough, if I was serious, you said to get in the ring. So I was like, all right, cool. I got in the ring and didn't expect to get in there and spar. But as soon as I got in the ring, I got my ass kicked by Brian because he kicked me. He kicked me so many times, and I probably got one punch out the whole deal.
Yeah,
but. I think that was your way of testing me if I was serious about getting in there.
Monty gave me a heads up. Monty called me.
See?
So Monty Cox is like the grandfather of MMA in the Midwest. I mean, he sent so many guys to the UFC. At one time he was the man for managing the best fighters in the world. I mean,
because he started out with Pat, those guys, right?
Pat, Jeremy, Matt Hughes, Tim Sylvia. I mean, Jesus, Jens Pulver.
And so all the young people listening to us, those are some of the first MMA folks to come out of the Midwest.
But Monty called me and said, "Hey, Houston Alexander's going to give you a call. He needs a trainer, and I want him to work with you." And I said, "Man, I don't want anything to do with this Bourbon Street bullshit." And he's like, "No." He goes, "He's got a big fight." He goes, "I got him a UFC contract." And I was like, "No way." And he's like, "No, for real." And I was like, "How do you manage that?" So he told me that you had demolished everybody. Yeah. He brought you up there thinking that this other guy was going to just screw up the floor with you.
Exactly.
And so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he comes, and Monty's like, "Hold up. Let this guy here. Hang on a minute. I want this guy." And so I said, "Well, who's he fighting?" And he's like, "Well, that's the problem. He's fighting Keith Jardine." But I'd been to Bourbon Street enough and watched him enough that immediately my mind was like, actually, kind of like that fight.
See?
Keith didn't have much of a ground game. He liked to stand and bang. And I knew that we had one chance, but I believed that he could do it. And I said, "I like that fight." And Monty's like, "You do?"
Yeah.
Because I think Monty was just kind of like, the UFC needs somebody. I got all my guys over here. I'll just throw him this guy. Because you weren't really Monty's guy yet.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
Because he was just trying to test the waters.
He comes in the gym, and I was like, we could win this fight. But he knew nothing about the UFC. One of the funniest stories I remember about that weekend.
I never really watched it.
So we go to Vegas. I may be jumping ahead here a little bit, but we go to Vegas and I'm trying to explain to him, like, yeah, you got to do a press conference. And he's like, I just want to fight. And I was like, yeah, but this is all part of the deal. Like, this is the big leagues now. You got to go to this. We got to go to this press conference at this time. And he's like, yeah, whatever. He just wants to hit people. So we were walking in the press conference at the MGM, and there's this short, bald guy standing at the door, greeting all the fighters. And he, as we're walking in, he said, "Hey, man, nice to meet you. Welcome to the UFC." And Houston's like, "Yeah, bro, nice to meet you." And walks by, and Houston goes, "Who the fuck is that guy?" I said, "That's your boss, man. That's Dana White." And he goes, "Oh, shit." He goes, "That's Dana White?" I go, "That's Dana White." So he runs back. He's like, "Hey, Mr. White, thank you for the opportunity." I'm like, oh, my God. Like, he really doesn't watch this shit. He has no idea that we're about to, like, this is the big leagues now. Like, he just didn't.
Yeah, but because maybe that was to our advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that was to the because we didn't. I didn't know what I didn't know was the scale it was on. I just wanted to fight. That's it.
Yeah, and Keith Jardine was a pretty big opponent. I mean, I know I didn't get to see the fight live. I watched it later, probably years later at that point, because I kind of got into the UFC late. But that was a big thing. You knocked him out, and then it was like, holy crap, who's this guy? Let's and then you got quite a bit. Did you get more fights on a contract? How did that work?
We did get a bunch because Mick knew a lot about what was going on behind the scenes. And this is the beauty about doing a podcast, because they see this is the behind the scenes that a lot of people didn't know.
So I'll back up a little bit. So I believed that we could win the fight. I had seen a weakness in Jardine when he would get hit a certain way or a certain part of his head, that he always seemed to kind of buckle a little bit. And I'd seen him have this punch at Bourbon Street and lay guys out. And that's why I liked the fight. So I've never, ever gambled money on a fight except that one.
Oh, really?
We were in Vegas.
I didn't know.
We were in Vegas. You're in the casino, and I'm looking at the odds, and I was like, I can't even remember what the odds were, but you were the massive underdog, and I threw $100 down. I've never done it on any fighter, but
That's funny.
I believe that we could knock him out, and I knew that it had to happen quick, because I knew that at the time, you didn't have the endurance to go 3 rounds with a guy like that, who was a veteran at that point. Like, we had to roll the dice quickly, and then take a bag of cash and bounce.
But what was that? What was interesting though? Even with that first meeting with Dana White, and I just found out who he was. The night before we fought this guy, I went up to him because I saw him in the lounge down. I told him I said, Keith, I'm sorry to have to rain on your parade, but we're gonna beat your boy's ass tomorrow.
Oh, you said it's a Dana.
I said this to him. I said, So I'm sure he remembers this. But I said we're gonna beat your boy's ass tomorrow.
Nice.
And I walked away.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go from basically not watching the UFC to being in the UFC. How did training change? How did things change after that happened? Actually, there's okay. This is kind of a career, at least temporarily.
But and this is for all the fighters that are listening to this. I don't think it changed too much. I think the more of the business side of things started transpiring, and having to be focused more on the different styles of fighting and different techniques and all those things like that. I think it was more pressure to do more in such little time. So I think that just the fact that we had to make sure that we was in right positions, that we was fighting a certain way, et cetera, instead. That I think that was what got more difficult. as you know, we went on. But it wasn't difficult.
'cause
It wasn't difficult at all. But I wasn't a trained fighter.
Yeah,
I was not a trained fighter.
He got serious about training for the Jardine fight. I mean, we only had like 9 weeks or so, 8 weeks or something like that. But so yeah, I mean, you dialed it in before the Jardine fight, and then it was like, okay, we got to keep this moving. You have a lot to learn, and the opponents are going to get more skilled in other areas, and then you got Dana White's attention. In fact, not a lot of people know this, but you know, the beginning contract of a UFC fighter is not that great, but there's obviously the bonuses now. There were back then, knockout a night, blah blah blah. But he was fighting on the undercard of, I believe, the Rampage Chuck Liddell fight. It was a big fight.
I don't think it was the undercard. I think we were at the beginning.
The beginning of the pay per view.
The pay. We were at the beginning of the pay per view.
But
that's what surprised did. Yeah. We was at the beginning of the pay per view. We were the first fight. I think we was the first fight of the pay per view.
So the knockout of the night bonus went to Rampage, or it went
Rampage, Chuck Liddell.
Went to those guys because they were the big stars, whatever. But as we're kind of packing up the locker room, Dana White himself walked in there. You remember this? And he said, "Kid," he goes, "I didn't know who the fuck you were this weekend." He goes, "But I love the way you fight," and gave him a check off the books for a lot more than your purse was.
It was like $14,000.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. The time when you were broke, when I was broke walking into there.
Yeah.
So, but it was an interesting time to go from the bar the bar fights, you know, to the arena fights, and to these different shows, these smaller shows, and to this being on television just like that. So much to where I was thinking amateur wise, I went and got a T-shirt done, and I got the T-shirt somewhere
at the mall, because
T-shirt at the mall.
That's right, because I'd gathered up a bunch of sponsors because you know it still was
another behind
a big
the scenes
expense.
deal.
So if you go back on YouTube and you watch that fight, he's walking out to the fight with his fucking white T-shirt, that just has the names, Big Brain, whatever.
Yeah,
all the sponsors. Like they don't even have the logos. We didn't even have time. We just paid some.
I went to the mall, got it. But here's the thing, though, that strategy worked because you could see every single person's name
as you're
on that white shirt coming into the ring. You know why? Because we had the lights on, white shirt, and it had black letters. So you saw everybody's names on the way there. So it was real simple.
Yeah. So did you keep laying asphalt after that, or were you able to retire from that?
I did. Yeah. Okay. But you know, it didn't last too long. But I still laid asphalt, and you know, the rest is here. Okay. The rest is history.
Yeah. So how long was the UFC run?
A couple of years? Yeah, at least a couple of years. Yeah. So and again, there was another one of those experiences where, you know, it to me being in that situation was like a rapper being in the industry. You know, you got a rapper like maybe the Sir Mix-a-Lot. He got that one song, Baby Got Back. Okay, but that's one song you'll never forget that this artist had. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I had my UFC run was the Baby Got Back Jardine. So that was my one-hit wonder at the time, and you know, and again, I was cool with it. Yeah. But you know, I was not satisfied with it. Yeah. But just again, and these industries to me are the same because you have all these artists like in rap, in the music industry, all these fighters in the industry of fighting with the UFC, the organization, and that's to me, that's how it was. Okay, that's how I looked at it.
Any like favorite memories or favorite fights or anything that kind of sticks out? I like the Dana White story, not recognizing him. Anything else fun like that?
I think he had hair too. I think he had something.
bit,
He had a little bit of hair. He was still trying to hold on.
Yeah.
There was a couple of times.
London.
Yeah, London was cool.
London was a special time for me.
Yeah.
Because my dad came over.
Wow, that's cool.
Yep.
And so my dad got to hang out with us for a big fight.
Yeah, that was really
and
cool.
then we went to
But
Ireland.
your mother though.
Yeah.
Then going over to Ireland was probably one of those things that changed my perspective from that point on.
Okay.
You know, and to being in a place that old and so much history, and to see a 14-year-old drink beer in a bar. Yeah, but it was crazy to be, because I'm a history guy, and to be over there and to be around all that history, man, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And because of Mick and because of the experience, you know, it just changed my whole entire perspective on things.
Yeah, I think I think my dad took you down to this old monastery. And
Yeah.
you were walking around looking at those headstones.
And the headstone,
Like they're so old, like you couldn't get over it.
the headstones were older than this country.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The headstones alone.
Yeah, I went out to Boston a couple years ago, and just seeing headstones from the 1700s
Yeah.
was crazy. But you realize this is still a new country, and you go to
Still a new
Ireland.
country.
What did you say? Dublin's 1,000 years old?
It's over 1,000 years.
That's crazy.
old.
Or Oxford University
Yeah.
is, I haven't got to experience a whole lot of that yet, but one of these days. So another thing that I kind of remember from that era is sports science, being on the sports science show. How did that come about, and how was that experience?
You really had to bring that up, didn't you? Jeez.
People bring that up to me all the time.
I know. You want to set that up? You want to set that up, Mick?
I think that was so he kind of like shot to superstardom, and then like I realized like, man, you need like an agent. Like I'm winging this. Like I don't know.
Yeah, we were all kind of winging it.
And there were agents hitting us up all the time, and
there was a particular agent though that set the sports science thing up.
Yeah,
That
that guy was good. He got the warrior fight gear, the tap out thing eventually, all that. He called us and said, "Hey, there's this new show. It's called Sports Science. They have different athletes on. Obviously, he was known for his punching power. They wanted to do an episode to." What they told us was how much power Houston can generate. And I was like, yeah, he'll love that. And they were like, but they need you. And I was like, well, they don't need me. I'm not going to be punching anything. And so we didn't really know until we got there what they were going to do.
Yeah.
So
this is a real Hollywood production.
Yeah. I mean,
they had the trailer
and a whole warehouse studio. And so like we were literally in the dark when we get there, and I see like medical equipment. There's a doctor, and I was like, "Well, who the fuck is he hitting? Like, is this why they brought me?"
Yeah.
So, so they basically are like, "Yeah, so we want to measure Houston's punching power, and then we're going to inject him with adrenaline, and then see what his power goes up to, and." Then we want you to like make him angry or make him mad after the adrenaline is out of his system, and then see the power of a coach versus a synthetic.
A synthetic.
And I was like, oh shit.
Adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
So what did you think? What was your thought process during that time? Say, outside of them explaining it to you.
I honestly thought it was dangerous. Like, I wasn't sure who would be more dangerous for, you or me pissing you off, or just them injecting you with a bunch of adrenaline. But then I'm looking like there was fucking paramedic squad outside. There's like operating room.
Me being as dumb as I am, I'm like, okay,
stick it in my arm, okay, yeah. But and then the producer of the show, we're talking to him, and actually it was the guy that
same guy that does he does sports science on Sports Center right now.
Okay.
I was like, are you sure you thought this through? Like, this could go like bad.
Yeah.
You know? And oh yeah, we got this doctor here, and I'm looking at the guy like, is he a doctor though? Or is he a Hollywood actor? Like, like if Houston codes, is the guy gonna go, well, you know, it was a good run.
Wow.
But no, that was pretty, it was wild, it was cool. And you know, so they're like, they don't give me much notice to say, all right, make him mad. And I'm like, man, it's like the happiest motherfucker in the world. Like, how do I make this guy mad? Well, you had just lost a fight.
Yeah, we just lost it. No, hold on. What was it? Tiago? Was it Tiago?
Thiago Silva?
Yeah.
We just
we lost to him.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was still not sitting good with him, and you know he wanted that fight back, and like I guess I've seen the clip enough now, but I do remember what I said. But at the time, that was like completely like unrehearsed. Like they're like, okay, we're going to put the cameras on you and go.
So, but here you pause that. The first time they hit me with the adrenaline. Yeah, it was all right? But when they say, what did you think about that? When they hit me with the adrenaline, what did you think?
All I was worried about
before you gave me the coaching advice.
I was like, man, I hope he hits this thing right and doesn't break his hand, because we could get a fight in a few weeks, or you know, like I was like, don't break your hand,
because they had us hit a dummy. And obviously,
but inside that dummy was steel.
Yeah. I remember
like,
seeing that.
So it wasn't like a punching bag. So you know, because I walked over to him on tap, and I was like, oh fuck, like if he hits this wrong, it'd be easy to break your hand on this thing.
It looked plastic on television, ladies and gentlemen, but it was this steel
dome.
It was steel dome that I was hitting. Wow. That made it even extra, you know, crazy. So when I put the adrenaline inside my body, and when I peaked at a certain poundage, you know, I was angry, but I wasn't as angry as I was when he came over and said what he said.
Yeah. Fuck, I was making myself angry. I wanted to punch the thing. But
the adrenaline, it increased, but the anger actually really
So they come over, all the white coats come over, and the producer comes over to him and says what?
They're like, make him angry. And I was like kind of joking, like, are you sure? And they're like, no, we want you to make him angry and go. And I'm like,
okay.
Yeah. All right. And so I was just
now, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, we just lost to Thiago Silva.
Yeah.
So
and I knew that, like, emotionally, you know, and this was a time in the UFC where it wasn't uncommon that if you lost one fight, you were done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like they didn't honor contracts back then, because there was 50 guys behind you, just like his situation, that were one phone call away, not one fight away, just a lucky break away from taking someone else's spot on the roster.
That's why even back then, before we continue the story, it meant a lot to even get to that point.
Yeah.
Back then, because, you know, not everyone got to that point. Either you got grandfathered in a certain way, but not everyone got to the UFC like how they do it nowadays. You know what I'm saying? They're kind of cattling everyone in right now.
Now you know your path to the UFC. Yeah. You fight for this organization, you win some belts, you know, then you're probably going to get the call up. And now the UFC has competition too, so that's always makes it better for fighters.
Yeah.
But back then, if you wanted to be on TV, that was the only show. That was where everybody was.
So you earned. So when you got to the UFC at that time, you earned it.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
But they come up to me asking you to get me mad. And what did you say?
I said, remember when you lost? I said, remember that feeling? Sitting in the dressing room, and
we
could see
we was
his
pissed.
eyes started to get teary, and I was like, got him. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Sign of a good coach,
and then,
you know?
So here's what's funny. I make him mad, right? He hits this thing, and like immediately I'm like, oh yeah, that's gonna blow that fucking score out of the water. So they get all the numbers, and they're like, okay, we need you to calm him down. I said, I'm not going to go talk to that guy. I said, you just fucking told me to make him mad, and now you want me to...
Man.
I'm like, no.
Oh,
I'm just letting that happen by itself. And he did. He walked away kind of behind the curtain. You could hear him back there, like, just huffing, and, like, he was fucking mad. And I was like, man, I'm not going back there.
Man, yeah, I'm thinking about it now. I'm getting pissed.
Oh, yeah. Watch out, Josh.
This is a small room. So.
Yeah, but it was this. Yeah, but that was the emotion. That was the emotion.
Yeah,
and I still hate losing, even though that's part of the process. You know, who likes losing?
Yeah.
No.
Well, especially in MMA. Maybe Nurmagomedov is, undefeated, but he also stopped. A lot of people keep going, and in this game, eventually you're going to lose. So, but after UFC, there's still been plenty of fights left. So you've been in Bellator. Now it's BKFC. Any other promotions that you've fought for?
Now I'm probably fought a whole bunch of street.
Yeah.
No, but I think Monty sent me all over the place.
Yeah.
So but I just made good with the whatever the situation I had, and especially being, I was an amateur who was still getting paid because even with Chad, I wasn't even an amateur then. He paid me the first time I was in the ring. So is that an amateur getting paid?
Oh, no.
So I've always gotten paid being in the ring. So.
But
I just didn't have the experience, that coach, had with other people.
But like Bourbon Street, it didn't matter. Like, do you remember Kong Napa? You remember that Thai champion that was here?
Yeah, I believe so.
Kong was here training, and to make a little extra money, he would go there and help set the ring up. Well, one night, there's this drunk dude is making fun of Kong not speaking good English and being from Thailand. And he's doing like the slanty eye thing. And so I get a phone call. And they're like, hey man, do you know Kong is going to fight at Bourbon Street? And I was like, no. I go, he doesn't do MMA. I go, what? And I go, the guy's like a 6-time world Muay Thai champion. They're like, somebody pissed him off. And I was like, no, man, don't let that happen. So I dashed down to Bourbon Street. I think it was Chad that probably lined that up.
Chad was lining everything up,
And so I'm like, Kong, you can't fight. Like, these guys they don't have any training. Like, and he's like, no, coach, he needs to be taught a lesson. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, well, just don't kill him, okay?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I just teach him a lesson. And so Kong kicked him in the head kicked him in the leg a couple of times, and then kicked him in the head. Guy goes down, and the referee is like, back then, the referees almost would help you up.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the referee, I think it was Big Fitz, and I was like, no,
Yeah.
no, leave that kid there.
Yeah.
Because he's going to die. If he gets up, he's going to die.
And was you there when Nair kicked the guy's teeth out?
Josh.
Yep. When Josh kicked that guy's head. He soccer kicked that guy in his teeth, and the guy looked over and spit all four of his teeth out.
Ugh.
Yeah. So again, that's why I asked you at the beginning of the podcast. So, what do you think now, from then to now, and how things are being run now? Do you like the progress?
Yeah, it was much more. It was much more savage back then.
Yeah,
some
but
people
I'm just not talking about the fighting style, just the way things are being ran now with organizations, gyms. What do you think?
Yeah,
Coach?
I think it needed to happen. I was part of the national committee that wrote the unified rules on MMA. I got asked to do that. Pat Miltek was also one of the guys too. But I'll tell you a funny story about that too that relates to you. But I think it needed rules. It needed.
So you helped the universal rules to MMA.
We helped write it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was a bunch of us coaches and fighters at the time that helped kind of write the unified rules. But the guy that was heading it up was the then president of the Association of Boxing Commissioners, because the boxing commissions in the States were, at first, they really didn't care about MMA, but then it started to have the potential to make money.
Yeah.
So then they're like, no, hold on, you guys can't do that without us overseeing it. And then they were getting a percentage.
Because the boxing commission was still kind of running everything in all the cities.
So the head of the boxing commissions at the time, oh man, I can't remember the guy's name, but when I got asked to be on the committee, we had to send all of our thoughts to this guy. And when I saw who it was, I was like, oh no, this is bad. Because that was the guy in New Jersey who wouldn't let you fight like 10 minutes before you were supposed to go out because of the kidney to your daughter thing. Remember that?
Yeah, but hold on. Was that the thing?
When we were up in New Jersey for some UFC fights, I can't remember who you were fighting.
But I think was that Thiago though? Was that Thiago in third? Yeah,
it was.
That was Thiago.
A lot of people don't know this. Right before the Thiago Silva fight, like literally 15 minutes before the fight,
yeah, he was going to stop us.
The head of the boxing commission comes in and goes, "You're not fighting." And I'm like, "Wait, what do you mean he's not fighting?" And they're like, "He only has one kidney." And I go, "What the fuck does that matter?" And he's like, "He's only got one kidney." I go, "Every fighter here has one brain and one heart." Yeah. I'm like, neither of those, your kidneys have nothing to do with your fighting. I go, "He's passed every physical." And they're like, "No, fight's off." And him and I, we went at it like in a hallway.
And that I didn't see. I didn't see all that.
And I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. The UFC people are coming down. And I'm like, you can't pull this guy 10 minutes before the fight and then
this is the commission in Jersey.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was the head then he'd become the president of the boxing commissions.
Wow.
And so I didn't say anything. And after all the emails and everything were sent about this rules, that rules, and it was very cool. Like we had a lot of really good coaches at the time and fighters or ex-fighters that were all involved in helping write these rules.
Yeah.
Nick, what's his name? Nick something. But afterwards, in a different email, he sent out, he was great. He sent out an email to everybody and he's like, "Hey, Mick, really appreciate your input. You had some great points about this and that, and appreciate you being part of this." And I was like, "Hey, we know each other, right?" And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I tell him and he's like, "That was you?" And I go, "Yeah." And he actually said, he's like, "Man," he goes, "do these guys know how much you coaches go to war for these guys?" And he goes, we had it out in the hallway at the, I think it was like the Prudential Center in New Jersey or something like that. And I was like, "Oh yeah." I go, "My guy had passed his physicals. He'd done everything. And then 15 minutes before you're going to pull the plug. And then after a lot of arguing, you go, okay, he can fight." And like, I mean, to this day, I don't know, but like, did the fact that I wasn't in the locker room warming you up before we went out, did we, we lost all that time of, is he fighting? Is he not fighting?
Yeah, I think you think they could have kind of.
I don't know.
But this is what I've always wanted to ask you. Do you think, especially coming to the gym for the first time, and you knew what type of fighter, I was, even seeing me in the early days. Do you think me learning all these things all at once kind of took away my fighting ability, the instincts that I already had? You think you did, or did that? We're learning so much all at once. Do you think it took away from what the animal instinct was?
No, I think with most fighters, I think if you give them more skills to layer onto their animal instinct, I just think it makes them more dangerous. I mean, you essentially grow more fangs. If you can finish a guy on the ground or finish him on your feet, like it doesn't matter if you can. And at that level, at the trajectory that the sport was going, the guys that couldn't be well-rounded were going to get exposed. Like Hoist Gracie fighting today in the UFC would get demolished.
Yeah.
You know, because you look at the guys that, you know, the early guys, like the Chuck Liddells, the Tito Ortizes, any of those guys that tried to come back and get entangled with these younger, much more rounded fighters, they just get destroyed. And it's not just age.
But even with Chuck, though, speaking to him, he said he was doing karate or sometimes at 12 years old. Now you had a 29-year-old man walking into your gym, trying to learn all this stuff all together. Do you think? And again, I already knew how to box and I already knew how to do certain things, but I think my instinct was probably one of my benefits.
Yeah.
And do you think there was a fight overload with trying to learn all that stuff at the same time?
I mean, I think to me, I was never in any doubt that there was always one way you were going to win a fight, and that was to knock guys out. But you couldn't do it on your back. So anyone that was training to fight you would be like, get him on his back.
Yeah.
So there was certainly a time where we had to address like, all right, how do we stop these guys from putting you on your back so easy? How do we, it wasn't like, I'm not trying to turn you into a Muay Thai champion. I wasn't trying to turn you into a Jiu-Jitsu black belt. It was, can we stop some of these things that are going to come at you where you can punch guys still?
Because the levels
were going to get better and better. I mean, that's just the way it was. These weren't in your mind, you were fighting in Bourbon Street, but the skill level of your opponents, they weren't Bourbon Street. These were you were swimming with the sharks at this point. So, we had to make sure that if you were going to be a shark like them, that you owned the water too.
And striking first.
Yeah. I mean, we never left that. It was always going to be striking first, and you're still doing it.
And so with the kids listening to the podcast right now, what advice would you give them, especially if they're just starting off? Because I get this all the time. People are like, ask me, man, how do I get started? But what better person to ask but a person who's fought and a person who's coached the best. So what would you say to kids who are just starting off, in the early stages?
Like what?
Oh man, I want to be a UFC fighter. Or et cetera. No, just in the beginning.
I'll tell you
what realistic goals should they have?
They've already had to have shown some kind of dedication to get good at least one sport. And if I had my choice, it'd be wrestling. So if I get a 18-year-old kid that walks in the gym saying, I want to become an MMA fighter, I'll say, what you do in high school? I wrestled. I'm like, good. If they say to me, I was a quarterback, or, like if they didn't experience real raw contact all the time, they're almost a little late to the dance. Now, if they say to me, I've done boxing, or if they've dedicated a certain amount of time to contact or combat, rather.
Okay. That makes sense.
Then I think that they're probably on the right path, that they've maybe developed the discipline to torture their bodies, to be hit, to understand the difference between being hurt and being injured. We talk about this in the podcast a lot. They've already subjected themselves at an early age to some degree of hardship. And I think that that's very important if you want to become a fighter.
I guess me fighting ever since I was 8 years old on the streets.
Well, and doing 12 hours worth of asphalt out there too. I mean, that's.
But like 12 hours worth of asphalt. Okay, if you looked at the majority of the kids in our gym right now, age 16 to 18, how many of them do you see doing 12 hours of asphalt?
Not many.
Man, they'd rather sit in their car and do DoorDash. I mean, that's just the reality of it just.
Is there a certain fierceness that an individual should have?
Yeah, I think so.
Mentally as well?
I think you nailed it. I think there's a fierceness that you have to have if you want to become a fighter. And then the discipline, all that stuff. You know, and maybe I've said it in this podcast before, but there's a quote that I always remember, Angelo Dundee, that said, "A coach is only as good as the guy sitting on the stool in front of him." You know, and my saying that I've said for years is, as a coach, you can't make a racehorse out of a donkey. Some guys will just come in the gym. They're nice guys, but they're just fucking donkeys. They're just like, they're never going to become a racehorse. And as a coach, sometimes you have to tell them that. Like, hey, kid, this isn't for you.
But you're brutally honest with a lot of people. So
you know what? You know what I am? I'll tell you this, because this actually just got brought up in a conversation to me recently.
What's that?
The reason that I'm honest is I am one of those rare people that have been in both sides. I've been in the ring.
Yeah.
I've been in cages. I've fought every kind of rule style that you can think of. And I've been a coach. And I understand that as a coach, you're putting that kid in harm's way. And you hope that he's prepared himself for that.
Yeah.
And that as a coach, you've taken care, you've done your best for that person. You also hope that the fighter has done his best for himself and for you.
Yeah.
So I don't want that on my conscience of me cheating them or them cheating the game or their coach or their teammates. I won't put up with that.
So that's why you would rather, you know, even quit a relationship with a person.
Yeah.
If you see themselves,
If I see them, if I see
crashing and burning.
Yeah, and I don't want to be there to witness it. And if it go, and because it's fighting, it could, when you crash and burn, you can die.
Yeah.
And I don't want that on my conscience,
Yeah.
especially if I knew, oh man, I was letting him slip a little bit, or you know, if I knew in my heart that because
the person
I
trained
know,
hard enough.
yeah, because I know what it takes to fight.
Okay.
I'm not just a jockey on their pants, you know, along for the ride. Like, I know exactly what this game is going to take from you physically, mentally, everything. And if you can willingly be a slave to the game or slave to the process and almost have a sick sense of enjoying it while you do it, then you're going to get exposed. And what that exposure means is you could get badly injured. And I don't want to, I don't want to live with that.
Well, and I think one thing that's kind of special about you, you know, there's that saying, those who can't do coach, or those who can't do teach. But not only were you a world champion fighter, you're also essentially a world champion coach. And that's something very rare. You don't usually find the person who can perform at a high level and then also help other people.
Yeah, and I don't think
level.
you have to fight to be a good coach. Let me just say that, because, and that's in any sport.
But it sure helps though.
Well, I mean, it does. I think you get an insight.
Because I think you can explain it just a little bit better than someone who hasn't had the experience of being in any type of ring or have any type of, you know.
Yeah, but you also have I mean, look at other sports.
Bill Belichick,
Phil Jackson.
Bill Belichick and Phil Jackson. He played though.
But at what level?
He was in the NBA.
He was in the NBA. It was only for a couple of years, but
so you go Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick. He New England Patriots. He is a great example of what you're saying. I don't think he played football. He didn't play football, but he was a mastermind.
Yeah, he was
at putting in
football savant.
Well,
there you go.
Who's the Duke coach? What's his name?
The guy with the 40-year toupee.
Yeah.
Man, I forgot. I know.
Yeah, but like, I don't think he was a basketball player, but like the guy's a brilliant coach.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you have to do it. But if I'm sending a guy in to throw a ball in a fucking net that's 10 feet high, the risk that I'm taking on, if he hasn't done his job or I haven't done my job, is not that bad. But if I'm putting a fighter into harm's way, if I'm a captain in a special forces unit and I'm the weak link, and I'm basically putting guys lives on the line, and maybe I didn't fucking do my job good enough. I mean, that's the mentality I have when it comes to a fighter. Like, they could die on my watch. I don't want that.
And here's the most important thing about it, because I know this is going to have to be a number 2 with this podcast because we, again, not a lot of people not knowing the behind the scenes and not knowing what it takes to be a disciplined fighter or a disciplined coach. Even in the beginning, at in my early stages, coming to the gym and actually listening to Mick and his philosophy and the discipline, because the first thing you told me, even in the office, there has to be discipline. You have to be ready to train, and you have to be ready to listen. And that's one thing that the kids, whether you're a young lady or a young man out there, you need to know that you do have to submit and trust the individual that, whether it be a coach, teacher, whomever. You have to trust that person 100%. And the trust level that I have for this man, it was 110% because I tried to listen to everything. And even today, as a 51-year-old man still fighting, I think there was a few things you had told me that you told me that even then that I don't have a lot of wear and tear, even after a fight. I don't know, on my body, I never had a lot of wear and tear like how a lot of people had. And so whatever disciplines I've learned from him then is what I'm what's registering now.
Yeah. So
whatever teachings then is still registering right now.
Yeah.
Which makes me who I am today, to what we do, when I can get in the ring and fall back on what was said back then.
Well, and that's something we've talked about quite a bit, I feel like, on this podcast, is there's people with a lot of talent, but they aren't necessarily coachable, or they don't work hard, or they don't have that discipline. And I remember Freddie Roach saying the craziest, or one of the coolest things about Manny Pacquiao was not only was he just an amazing athlete, but he was completely coachable. He trusted his coach. He did what his coach said. And that's how you get these high caliber guys or girls or whoever, is somebody who not only has the genetic ability to do it, but also is willing to take that advice and get better by listening to someone who knows what they're talking about. So wow, this has flown by. We're almost at an hour and a half, but I got a couple. Do you have something?
No, I was just going to ask him about,
we can do a part 2
of
this.
We'll definitely
we have to,
part 2.
because this is a teachable moment for a lot of these fighters.
Well, just to kind of to accentuate that, now you've become a mentor in the community. I mean, you always were. Everybody knew who you were, but one of the cool things for me watching is you've used the notoriety that fighting has brought you, and now you're giving it back to the community, which you were always involved in, but now it's on a bigger scale. Now, you want to talk a little bit about?
Well, people actually listen to me. People actually listen to me now. But even with that notoriety, the goal was always to do things in the community, and I've been doing stuff in this community ever since I was 13 years old. So I think having that knowledge of how things are ran internally and externally, you have to translate that to the kids, and because I was always told, if you get to the kids, you get to the parents, because the parents they already think they know better, but the kids don't know nothing. So I've taken all the knowledge I've gotten over the years of not knowing better, and trying to teach the kids how to know better. Okay. And in all aspects. So whether being in your community, whether being at home, or whether it be with yourself, I've always tried to instill that in the kids, because the adults seem to be lost, right?
And you're doing this through Houston Alexander Foundation. Is that the title?
Well, that's the Houston Alexander Foundation started with me wanting to do something in schools with the hip hop culture. Okay. Because the hip hop culture itself has gotten a bad rap over the years because of the one element of the culture that everyone thinks is the main part, which is rap. And so you're getting a lot of the language, you get a lot of the negative imagery from rap. So our job, I wanted to go into the schools and teach the kids about what it was about: music, dance, and art. And so that's that we got that started through a radio station with here in Omaha, Nebraska. And that's how we got into the schools, and that's how I started the foundation through this thing we call the Culture Shock School Tour.
Okay. Where can people find information about that? Is it anything online?
Yeah, you can go to HoustonAlexander.org, and then you can see all the videos of me trying to break dance.
You can still break dance.
Yeah, I can still dance. So,
well, that was one thing I was going to mention. It didn't really fit in, but you seem to be a very multi-talented person, because I know breakdance, graffiti. You did the graffiti art, because we've got some art
since I was a kid, and a little bit of everything.
Yeah, featured in some of our podcasts, because we used to shoot the podcast at Back in the War Room, which has some of your artwork back there.
So we got to redo that too.
But fighting,
I got to redo it.
DJing on the radio, you DJ events too. Is that correct?
I was DJing before I was fighting.
Okay.
I've been, rest in peace to my friend Ray Jefferson, but I started DJing on Technique 1200s.
Okay.
And that back in '88. So again, I'm old. So
Okay.
But yeah, been doing a lot of things, because nowadays in 2023, if you're just hanging on one type of an ability, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So you got to have different types of ability, like we're doing. Who would ever thought that Coach B would be doing a podcast?
Yeah.
Whoever thought, you're training people, fighting, and we're doing all these multiple things, but that's how you have to be in this type of world.
Okay. Well, kind of two things I want to cover, and they coincide before we end. So you just had a BKFC fight. You just said you're 51 years old. You just won.
We got to explain to the people, the podcast people would be.
BKFC is the Bare Knuckle Fight Club. So it's bare knuckle boxing. You go in with tape on your wrists, nothing on the knuckles.
Yep.
So it's pretty brutal. It's very intense. It's very exciting. It seems to be really kind of on the way up. But you just had a fight.
Organization-wise. Yeah. Organization-wise, because it's always been around, because you would never guess who had taught me about the bare knuckle thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
because that was a Sabaki challenge, right?
Where did bare knuckle start?
Started with the traveling community in Ireland, and back then, going back to John L. Sullivan and the great bare knuckle boxers before, and
starting
bare
over in
knuckle
Europe,
boxing
right?
started before the Marcus de Queenbury rules, where gloves came on and there was rounds and all that stuff. But most of the boxing matches were bare knuckle, and it still goes on. But my coach, when we were kids, used to bring us, and we would the traveling community in Ireland, commonly known as like the gypsies, but the traveling community, they have always been notorious fighters and legendary bare knuckle boxers. And so to blood us as youngsters, they would arrange these youth matches, I guess. My coach would have went to jail over here for child abuse.
So that's what I'm saying.
But then he also had the blessing of my dad.
They were already doing the bare knuckle over in Europe. Before, and I believe the organization has made it a little bit more familiar to people nowadays. You know what I'm saying? And me seeing it, I was like, oh, that's easy compared to the other stuff you were doing. And I think people think I'm crazy when I say that the bare knuckle thing is easy.
Yeah.
But Coach, do you see it being easy in some ways?
Yeah,
because you don't have to worry about getting kicked.
Two weapons. Yeah.
You don't have to worry about getting kicked, submitted. That's easy. So it's easy.
So along those lines, I guess the two-sided question I want to ask is, number one, how has training changed these days for you? And I've heard lots of legends about what training used to be like. You kind of gave a hint of jumping in the ring with Brian Corley. Now, Brian Corley's not necessarily a name that anybody or most people listening to this podcast would know, but Brian is a freak athlete. When he's kicking the pads in here, it sounds like a shotgun.
He's world champion, what?
I don't think he ever won.
I thought he had won a couple of.
He was a U.S. champion.
U.S. champion.
Yeah.
So
Muay Thai.
So how has training changed nowadays, especially, a little bit older, still fighting? How has training changed? And then what's one of the crazier stories from training back in the day?
I don't think any, what's changed, I think the fact that you have to box more. And I think you have to stay with bare knuckle. You have to stay tighter when you're boxing. but more boxing rounds, and it's, to me, it's the same thing as boxing, period. You know what? It's just without gloves. You just got to stay tighter in your movement. You got to stay tighter, and you got to hit first.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to hit first, but I don't think anything's changed. Except for just making sure you're tightening everything up.
Okay.
Well, I see on social media though you do a lot. You pay attention to recovery now.
Yeah.
You seem to do a pretty good job of doing your cryotherapy and your hyperbolic chamber and all this stuff.
Let's talk about the colon cleansing.
Yeah. He's doing that too.
Hey, I tell people all the time, colon cleansing. When I was turned on to that, for any athlete that's out there,
turned on.
Colon cleansing. Oh, really?
Yeah. Those two words shouldn't exist in the same sentence.
No, it should not be.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I first got, and again, I'm good with myself. So any situation I put myself in, I'm very comfortable in my own skin. So, but when I got it done, they put this tube up your butthole, and what they do is they put all this water inside your stomach, and it goes from the intestines to the colon to the liver, where they're flushing all the bacteria and all the toxins out of your body. So and when I first got it done, I'm sitting here having this conversation with this tube up my ass with this lady, and watching the machine and watching her flush all this stuff out of my stomach was probably one of the most amazing things I've seen in a very long time. And it went from intestines to your colon to your liver, and you saw the different levels of colorization and the crap coming out of your stomach just from this process. And it usually takes 15 minutes, but us being in the situation and me wanting to go further than what I was doing, it took about an hour and a half. And after it was done, it was probably the best feeling I've ever had in a very long time.
Interesting.
So I think and the physical has always been there for us, because we're all burly, strong guys. But I think at getting older, making sure your internal, that's my plan now. Making sure the internal is it's all balanced out, because then that balance out the physical.
Okay. All right. Well, what's the craziest thing that Mick ever made you do, or maybe who knows? It doesn't even have to be you. What are some of those stories from?
I think throwing the tires for the first time. And when
we got a picture of that up on the wall from World Herald.
But throwing the tires, and it's funny because throwing a tire, you wouldn't think that throwing a tire would harden your body, but I think after throwing those tires for years, I think yeah, really? That's probably been the craziest.
Yeah, I used to make him throw tires backwards over his head up a hill,
and forward.
Yeah,
and forward. So yeah, and I tell people that all the time, or I would train with people, and I would have them do it.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised that some people can't even get it over their head.
Yeah.
And so that's how weak a lot of our kids have gotten over the years, because there's no physical activity. But yeah, man, that's one way to learn balance and to learn physicality is throwing that tire.
Okay. Awesome.
It's not a cool story, but they go out and try to
give it a try, and you'll see.
Go out and try to throw a damn tire.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, this guy was strong enough that I probably could have left him on the car.
Yeah,
and he still got the thing up over his head.
I was a little stronger back then, but I'm not too bad right now, even at my age.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really fun conversation. We absolutely need to do it again.
Yeah. We'll have to do it again because there's a lot of things that they can learn from what we've been talking about, and even a lot of stuff behind the scenes that might help them. So and I think when you do podcasts, you if you're not educated when you're listening to the people, then you shouldn't be listening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to continue this conversation, because there's a lot of things that can be talked about that can help these kids out, or even people who think that I might still have it. And if you have been that fierce fighter, and you think you still have the ability to get in there and still do it, maybe they can listen to what we can tell them to do.
Yeah,
For sure.
awesome. Well, any final thoughts from either of you before we wrap it up?
No, he's got to go get a tube up his bum, I think.
No, that was a couple of days ago.
Going every third day. That's what we're hearing.
No, you know, no. I try to. Now I'm going to start doing it. To be serious, start doing it every 3 months.
Okay.
Because again,
Is that what they recommend?
no, but she recommends it once a month because again, because of all the bacteria that's in our body. Even the people that are trying to be vegan. She said the one thing, and we don't have to keep talking about it, but she said the one thing that would impress me was that even though you're growing the plants and you're not putting all the insecticides and stuff on the plants and you're trying to be all natural, she said, what's the one thing that plants need to help them grow? Oxygen. And where's the oxygen coming from? The air. And what's in the air? Toxins.
Contaminants, yeah.
Pollution.
So there's still. You're still getting toxins even from the food you're claiming doesn't have all the crap in it. So either way.
Awesome. I'm not sure I'm going to go schedule one quite yet, but I'll certainly keep it in mind. So.
Hey, you when you notice that your stomach all of a sudden just out of nowhere just starts hurting, it's because your intestines are blocked, and you need to release whatever's in your stomach. That's why steak is hard to digest.
Okay.
After 3 or 4 days because it just sits there. You don't want fleshy shit to sit in your stomach. Come on, man.
No.
Just think about it. It's weird.
Okay. Awesome. Well, this has been a blast.
Todd and Tyler told me to tell you hello.
Oh, yeah, cool. Those guys.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on. We will definitely do this again. This was a blast. Great to meet you. Great to kind of learn a little bit deeper, go behind the scenes and see what's happened in the UFC in the early days. And honestly, it's just kind of fun seeing the back and forth between coach and fighter, and I get to see that from a lot of different angles. But
next time we'll talk about your toes.
Oh, my toes.
Yeah, right.
They're not painted today, are they?
No, not today.
Okay.
I was with my nieces all week, but
sometimes when he's with his nieces, he comes back with fucking colored toes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
They just say, but you're okay in your own skin. Say your own skin.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We will catch you next time around.